So Fernando is asking me a rather interesting question about the Amazon interview, that is, what are the most common leadership principles getting tested through failure stories? And it's actually quite a smart question because if you think about it, pretty much any leadership principle can be tested through a failure story if you could only, express that question in a negative way. But there are some principles that are getting tested more often than others, and that's why I'm making this video. So let's take a couple of examples of such questions, and then let me give you my 2 cents on how do they go about this. The most basic of these failure questions is simply tell me about the time when you failed. And in my opinion, this is a rather general question, and it could fit into many principles such as deliver results or are right a lot, depending on what type of failure you're going to talk about. You could talk even about a failure with a colleague if you want. But the primary reason they ask you this question, in my opinion, is that they want to see whether you have a proper failure in the first place, and in the second, what you learned from it. So this would be the main thing. So it's not necessarily linked with the principle, although it could be linked with the principles, but they don't want you to know which principle it would be. And if you don't catch the principle from the first answer, which is not a wrong thing, this is not a disqualifier, by the way, they will probably, further rephrase their question to be more into the principle. Second, the time when you had to apologize to someone, right? So you don't apologize to someone unless you do a mistake, right? So it's a failure thing. This is the principle of earn trust. So this is a very important principle that even if you won't really feel it many times, it gets tested, and not only at Amazon, by the way, in pretty much any high-performing company. Next example, give me an example of a time when you did not meet a client's expectation. What happened, and how did you attempt to rectify the situation? So a time when you failed with the customer, with the client. So this is customer obsession, the most advertised leadership principle at Amazon. This is actually testing your customer obsession. So just one more time here, they are testing to see whether you had a proper failure and what you learned from it as well. Next example, tell me about the major mistake that you made and what did you do to correct it? So these mistakes, tend to be more, again, on the general side of things. But if I'd have to pick a leadership principle that is, I know from experience might get tested, is I write a lot. So I write a lot could get tested, when they're asking you about mistakes in general. Tell me about the last time a customer or coworker got upset with you, right? So a customer or coworker got upset with you. So I know, a previous example was, with when you failed with a customer, and that would be customer obsession. But this one, to me, is more in the terms of earn trust, especially because it's a customer or coworker. So I would rather put this in the leadership principle of earn trust. But, if they're only talking about the customer, it could as well be in the customer obsession category. Again, this is you're not getting disqualified if you don't match the principle. It's just that, you must catch the principle most of the time. And from experience, this happens with the top-notch candidates. It gets close to 90%, but usually around 80%. And you still can easily get a job offer if you get it 80% of the time. Next example, tell me about a goal that you failed to achieve. So this is the classic example of deliver results. And deliver results is one of their favorite principles that they test with these failure stories. At least in my experience, deliver results was the most commonly tested principle that I've heard. Tell me about a decision that you regret. So this is, to me, a classic example of I write a lot as a leadership principle. Give me an example of a team project that failed. So to me, this is deliver results. However, you could also say that because of the fact that it's a team project, you could also talk about, there might also be a slight implication of ownership, of you taking ownership of the project. And, it's the team thing might be a little bit misleading. So ensure that you failed. You don't release your obligations on a we failed as a team. Next example here. Tell me about the time when you made a mistake at work and how did you deal with it? So a mistake at work, to me, this is a pretty general question. So again, the primary purpose they would ask you this Probably they don't want you to know the principle they want to test you on, or they simply want to see on whether you have a failure at all, or they want to see whether you learn from your failures, which, by the way, is also very common that they test these things. Tell me about the time when you are not able to meet the time commitment. What prevented you from meeting it? What was the outcome and what did you learn from it? Deliver results. So when you could not deliver on a time commitment, it's obviously a deliver results. Your delivery is getting tested here. Describe an example of when you took a risk and failed. So when you took a risk and failed, if you took a risk, for example, in a fast-paced project, this could as well be a bias for action. But the classic scenario, more often than not, this is also deliver results that they are interested in testing you on. So this would be, the most common leadership principles, if you want, that would get tested with these failure stories. Again, keeping in mind the overall perspective that pretty much any leadership principle they want to pick, they could come up with the failure story that asking you by simply getting on the negative side, asking you about something that you failed with that principle. So hopefully, this answers the question, and this also helps you in the interview prep. And thank you very much for watching.